Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Dr. Will. Thank you for tuning in to the Will to Win podcast. This is our place to learn, grow, and create. And as I've been telling you, what my plan is to bring an amazing guest every time we come together. People that have inspired me, people that have mentored me, people that have had a genuine impact in my life. And I'm super excited to have with us today the phenomenal, the amazing Dr. George Fraser. Unless you've been living under a rock for the last 40 years, you've heard this name. He is one of the most phenomenal businessmen in the world. He has built a network of millions of professionals. He is the CEO and founder of Power Networking Conference, one of the most premier, Forbes calls it one of the top 5 conferences you have to attend. I've had the pleasure of attending multiple times, had the pleasure of being a speaker at the conference. It is the mecca. It is the mecca of bringing top Black professionals together across the nation. I am so super excited to have Dr. Fraser with us today. Welcome, good sir.
Hey, good looking. How you doing, boy? I don't know how you do it, man, but that bald head on you is fabulous. Complimented by those glasses and that incredible shirt that you have on and your wonderful voice, man. It is so good to be with you. You are all that and a bag of chips, as I like to say. You are the bomb.com. So I am honored to be in your presence and to have access to your incredible audience.
Well, let me tell you this. I don't even know if you remember this, but 15 years ago, I just recently got out the military, moved back to the United States. And when I moved back to the United States, one of the things that I did was I took out a notepad and I said I wanted to meet some of the top influential voices in America. And I simply back then just did a Google search and your name came up. And so I remember writing your name on a list. This is an individual that I want to meet. And as the gods would have it, we ended up meeting at the White House with Ron Busby with the U.S. Black Chamber, and I was just enamored. I remember us being on the bus, and I'm like, "That's him. That's him. That's him." And I mustered up the courage to come over to you. I had a back then it was Blog Talk Radio, so I had a program on Blog Talk Radio, and I said, Dr. Fraser, I would love to have you on my show. And you said, well, here's my card. Please give me a call and we'll make it happen. And you did that. And I said, no way, no way he's going to answer the phone, and no way this is going to be him. I'm going to have to go through all these bells and whistles to get to him. But I was excited that, I was on the track. And I'll never forget, I called you. You happened to be on the golf course, place that you love to be. And I said, I was calling for Dr. George Fraser. Yeah, this is me. What can I do for you? And I almost froze because I couldn't believe the amazing Dr. George Fraser was on the other line. And so you've always been a true mentor for me. I've enjoyed watching you over the years, the amazing things that you have been doing. And one of the places that you have been instrumental to me, I'll give you another story. We had the opportunity to speak together here in Phoenix at a conference, and you were getting ready to leave the conference, and you said, you know what? I'm getting ready to go on vacation with a group of my friends that I've been vacationing with for I think it was at that time maybe 25 to 30 years. And
That's right.
before we came on live, I asked you how long had you been married, and you said 51 years. And that's where I want to hop off because I think for this episode, we could provide great value. Me and Christy, we just hit 27 years last year. And so when I hear you at 51, that gives me a target, that gives me a vision to reach. And so I want to talk about what are your thoughts about marriage, the family, the Black family and the crisis that we're seeing. Some of the data that I've been reading is really heartbreaking because they're saying that marriage has taken a dip. So when you think about marriage, where are your thoughts?
Wow, great question. And as you know, my specialty is the power of the human connection, the importance of networking. I've written several books on that subject matter, and one of them is 32 years old and still being sold on Amazon 32 years later and still sells 10,000 copies. Success Runs in Our Race, The Complete Guide to Effective Networking in the Black Community. And one of the things I say in that book that really stuck with people is that the most important and the most powerful decision that you will make in your life, bar none, is your life partner. The person you choose to put your hand on a Bible and say, till death do us part. Now, that is a hell of a thing to commit to another person if you are not serious. And if you do not understand the hills and valleys and the twists and turns of staying with someone until you die. So that um so what has gotten my attention recently is the existential crisis that exists with the Black family today. Um, so let me riff on that for a second. There is no culture in the history of humankind, Dr. Will, that has maximized their full human potential without family at the center of that culture. This issue is a unique problem to the African American Negro. This does not exist anywhere else in the diaspora, but in the United States of America among us. It is an existential crisis. Let me say that sort of poetically. Without couples, you have no families. Without families, you have no community. Without community, you have no tradition. And without tradition, you have no culture. So the Black family is critically important because ain't nobody saving Black people but Black people. And it's been 400 years and we ain't saved. Who in the hell are we waiting for? We're waiting for us, and strong and productive and healthy Black families is primary to building power. And by power, I mean wealth. Every time you hear the word power, transfer that to money, to building money. Um, so when we look at the statistics, and I've spent 2 years studying this, and it's a subject, as I mentioned to you earlier, that I'm writing a book on. That's my next book, The New Flex, The Existential Crisis of the Black Family, The Path for Restoration. Um, it's very disturbing what is out here, and all of the brothers and sisters, folk watching this can fact check me. Go, I got it all on Google, and now with artificial intelligence, you can get every single statistic you want in minutes if you properly prompt the AI app that you're using. Here's what it looks like. Marriage in our culture is now down from 70%, which it was when I was growing up in the 60s as a kid, right? From 70% to 34%. 34%. Now, I have to be honest, the concept of marriage, because of social norms and conversations that has changed, marriage has gone down, not only with Black folk, but with white folk too, okay? But we know that when white folk catch a cold, Black people catch pneumonia, all right? So 34%, 71% of our women are not married. 29% of those women will never get married. 66% of our men are not married. 34% of those men will never get married. It is exacerbated by two very, very egregious statistics, and that is 72% of our children are born out of wedlock, and 80% are raised in a single parent household, principally by the woman. This is not good. And this phenomenon has had a profound impact on our ability to build family wealth. There are five major cultures in America. White folk, Europeans, in terms of median household income annually, were number one for 350 years. White folks made the most money in America annually than any cultural group in this country. They are no longer number one. They're now number three. So let me go through that just very, very quickly. Here are the five most productive in terms of economics, in terms of annual household income in this country. Number one are East Indians. What is the annual wealth or income in their families? $124,000 a year. What's the marriage rate? 94%. Who's number two? Chinese Asians. Household income, $109,000 a year. What's the marriage rate? Nearly 70%. Third are white people. Annual household income, $81,000. Marriage rate, 57%, down from 90%. They had the highest marriage rate in our country back in the day, 90%. Hispanics are number four at $63,000 a year in terms of household income. Marriage rate, nearly 70%. And we are at the bottom. Annual household income, 52,000 or 53,000. It's $52,860. So it's $53,000. What is our marriage rate? 34%. So you can see there is a direct correlation, Doc, between annual household income and marriage rates. The higher the marriage rate, where you have two working on and managing wealth for the family versus one, you're going to have a higher annual household income. We must fix this because all of the statistics and projections tell us that if we do not fix this, Black people, within a generation, it will be in the teens. In the teens.
Now, Doc, let me stop you because I want to make sure because I want to dig into this because I can already hear people saying, "Well, Dr. Fraser, you're acting like you don't understand what has happened to the Black race inside of America." So I want people to truly understand because this is one of the reasons why I love you and I follow you is because you don't just talk about the problem, you come with solutions. And so we understand, and so to move the conversation, I want people to understand you're listening to two individuals that we definitely understand the historical context of what has happened with the African American here in the United States. We understand slavery, we understand Jim Crow, we understand the civil rights. But in 2025, and I love what you said earlier, that Black people need to save Black people. And a lot of people would think that is a negative connotation, but when you study groups and when you study wealth, one of the things that I've realized is that no one cares about you. No one cares about you. And this is not a negative. This is not a negative. I'm not trying to be negative. What I'm saying is people are worried about themselves. Asians are worried about Asians. White people are worried about white people. Japanese are worried about Japanese. Hispanics are worried about Japanese. We can all play together and come together. But at the end of the day, if it comes down to me feeding my family or your family being fed, I'm focusing on my family. And it seems
That's
like
right.
in our community, we're always asking someone else to feed us. So let's talk about that when
That's
we talk
good. That's
about
good.
solutions.
I love it. I love how you teed that up. I've written for years, we must think race and culture first. I didn't say only, I just said first, and you just articulated that point. That's exactly right. There are 8 billion people in this world. 8 billion. Only 7% of those people are white people. 7%. 93% are melanated people, dominated by people of African descent at 1.5 billion, then Asians, then East Indians, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. So it's important to understand that. So why would white people, A, give us more than they have? They're not, right? What we will get from whites, who are the richest in the world and certainly in this country, we will get what I call crumbs that fall from the table. That's what we will get. They will never give us more than what they have. That makes no common sense. And this will continue to be and to do, and they will continue to be and to do to keep everything in their power, and to do everything in their power to keep us divided and poor. Certainly, we have seen all kinds of information on social media. That is their strategy with the continent of Africa, right? To keep them divided and poor, and we are being kept divided and poor. They are not here to repair us and to fix us. We know why we came here, and we know why we're here. And unless we fix that ourselves, it will remain. So let me say that a different way. Um, in order to begin addressing a problem, you must first understand that you have a problem. And then once you understand that you have a problem, and you alluded to this, you must understand what are the underlying reasons that evolved to put us in this position. Right? It didn't just happen overnight. Remember, this took 3 generations. Right? It took 3 generations to get us from 70% of marriage to 34% of marriage. And if it ain't fixed, it'll be in the teens. Right? And so the question is, once you understand the underlying problems that got us here, now you can come up with solutions to address this cancer. Because that's really what it's like. It's a cancer. It acts silently, and then eventually it metastasizes, and then it reaches critical mass, and it could kill you. Okay, so how did it happen? It began, and I'm going to try to make this as short as possible because that's a longer story. It actually began in the 60s with the Moynihan Report, the Negro Problem, a case for national action. And the Moynihan Report was produced by Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan from an assignment from Lyndon Baines Johnson, that they noticed that in the 60s, out of wedlock birth rate in the Black community was 25% and only 5% nationally. Why was our out of wedlock birth rate 5 times higher than the national average? And so they did a report. It came out in 1965. And it said all the things that statistics said, and then it gave us some solutions. And then it said, here, but here's our warning: we really can't fix you. There's no government program that we can put in place to determine how you make love and how you have babies. That is something that has to come internally. But if you don't fix it, remember now, this is 1965. This was the warning. This was the first shot. If you don't fix it, based on all facts, statistics, and trends, your out of wedlock birth rate will in the next 2 to 3 generations, if you don't fix it, will be in the 70s and possibly in the 80s. That will undermine the infrastructure of your two-person family, and that will have a significant impact on your ability to build wealth. Well, when the report came out, we thought it was racist. We thought it was unfair, and we thought it was inaccurate, and we absolutely ignored it. What happened? Exactly what the report said would happen. Wealth was impacted. Out of wedlock birth rate has skyrocketed to 72%, and single parent household, which they also predicted, is now 80%. So that was the first shot across the bow. Other influences was this whole in the 60s and 70s feminism. Now, Black women were not heavily invested in feminism, but the messaging going around for women at that time was now equal pay for equal jobs and better education. Also in the 60s, and I remember this, I'm from a family of 11, 8 boys and 3 girls. What did my parents tell my sisters? Don't ever depend on a Black man to take care of you. You must get an education and you must put yourself in a position to take care of yourself. Well, our sisters listened. And now Black women are the most educated women in America. And as a result of their education, their opportunities for upward mobility and different kinds of jobs other than cleaning houses and being nurses and teachers, and nothing wrong with any of that, right? Is unlimited. So they have outperformed on an educational basis and on an upward mobility basis Black men. That was another thing that happened. Now, in the 70s, along comes what I think is one of the most damaging psychological um, cultural phenomenon in our culture, rap music. People ask me all the time, what has happened to Black people, Dr. Fraser? I said, well, I want to say this is still beloved. We changed when our music changed. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, before she died, the great psychiatrist, Black psychiatrist, said that you cannot continue to call yourself niggas, bitches, and hoes and think that you will ever amount to. You cannot denigrate your own women, right? You cannot make us look less than we look in the eyes of the general population. It's going to have a domino effect and a poisoning effect on how we see each other. So rap music had a huge play in it. Then some books began to come out, and it was Shahrazad Ali with her. I think it was 1989. She came out with the book, The Black Man's Guide to Black Women. And she was very, very, very straight, no chaser on talking to Black women about how they should behave when they are fortunate enough to get a Black man. I had a little piece I wanted to read to you. I can't find it, but it was a straight, no chaser book, and Black women were really appalled by what she was saying. And so but she made national media. She was all over television at that time. She made the Donahue show, and she just had, Black women needed to get their hands together, ideas together, and get their minds together, and really understand that we have to have Black men, and there's certain ways that you have to comport yourself. Well, Black women were not feeling that. Then in 2024, social media added fuel to the fire. So we had Facebook in 2020, 2004, then we had Instagram in 2010, and then we had TikTok in 2016. So now when you look on Instagram, what is the subject du jour? The subject du jour, certainly on Instagram, is Black male-female relationships. And man, you ain't no telling what you might hear.
Right.
And it also, in a sense, poisoned how we thought about each other. So Kevin Samuels, who in 2020, God bless his soul, his whole show, which had 1.5 million followers, as you know, was about marriage. What's happening to marriage in our culture? I mean, he really read the Riot Act until he suffered an untimely death.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of social conversation about it, and a way that we were feeling about it that really fed the decline of Black marriage. Of course, incarceration rate among Black men did not help. We were 5 times more likely to be incarcerated than white folks. We were not getting as educated. We did not place as much importance on education as our sisters. And then ultimately, it morphed into, and I'll finish with this, it morphed into where marriage in our culture became the capstone instead of the cornerstone. See, when we were growing up, marriage was the cornerstone of the family. Now it's the capstone. So it just deteriorated to this.
So let me ask you this, because you've been married for 51 years. I've been married for 27 years. And I want to make sure, because you're dropping some nuggets. So for those of you that are listening, I hope you got your notebook out, because he's giving us what needs to happen, the action steps. But I want to make sure we dissect this, because you correlated marriage and wealth. We see it in the Asian community, 124 K, 94% marriage rate.
Mhm.
Um, you look at white, it's $81,000, 57%. We're at 53K with 34% marriage. What I believe, and this is what I teach, and I want to hear your insights on it. As a community, we have a lot of conversations that are missing in our community. And it's because of the lack of family. And what I mean by that is, for me, I was very intentional when I had kids that my schedule was going to be around dinner time. I made sure that I was always home 6 o'clock for dinner, because for me, that was going to be the time that I could talk with my kids, I could talk with my wife. And I tell people this all the time. If you take a kid from the age of 5 and you go to the age of 15, in this 10-year period, if you can have about 200 to 250 conversations, intentional conversations about wealth, about family, about legacy at the dinner table. If you think about that, in a year's time, it's 365 days. If you could make it to the table at least 200 to 250 times, that's over thousands of opportunities that you get to embed in your children, your philosophy, how you see life, right?
That's right.
For me
That's
and
right.
my wife, we always had a vision, because both of us, we came from broken families. And so when we got together, we said no matter what, we were going to stay together. And so we always had the idea, the vision of making sure that we had this family unit was more powerful than any disagreement that we had. And so you've been married for 51 years. I know it hasn't always been peaches and cream, right? And so for me, I always tell people, you got to have a vision beyond the argument. If you don't have a vision beyond the argument, it's going to be easy to break up. If you don't have a vision beyond either mistake that you or your wife make, it's going to be easy to break up. For me and my wife, we said we were going to make sure we stayed together. Now, once again, everybody, I want you to, if it's abusive and all that kind of stuff, I'm just saying, if it's, a good relationship, you got to have a vision beyond the little spats that you're going to get into. And for me, I've seen it play out. I've seen the children that I've raised. I've seen your children. I see the beautiful family pictures. I've asked you before, how do you create that? You said I was intentional about being a father. And so I want people to understand,
That's
because
right.
when we talk about providing solutions for our community, you're challenging us right now, because once again, no one is coming to save us. And I'll end here. I have a philosophy where I believe that we all need to, in our community, we all need to start individually. The Bible says judgment starts at the house. So I believe we got to start individually looking at the choices we're making. We talked about unwed mothers and the choices that are out there. This is not racism. This is not bias anymore. These are choices we are making. And I
That's
know
right.
we don't like to talk about that and discuss, what we're doing inside our own community, but let's start there. If we start changing, and I'm talking about 2025, once again, I said earlier, we understand what happened with slavery, we understand what happened with Jim Crow, we understood what happened with civil rights, but we're saying now, what needs to happen in 2025? And Dr. Fraser is sharing with us the mindset if you're going to go to the next level, because here's what's so disparaging when I read these statistics. At 53K, it is said that 20% of the population earns 100K or more. When I look at that, I think about two individuals earning 50K. If you can earn 50K, this goes back to the choice of what your degree is in, what you choose. When we look at these other communities, they're not smarter than us. They're choosing occupations that are pandemic proof, recession proof. And so when these calamities happen, there's not that seismic shift in their community. Whereas for us, we're making choices to sell candles and things like that that's not going to really move the needle. So when we talk about the marriage being the anchor, how do you see it being this driving force? And like you say, if you go on TikTok, there's this, no one wants to get married anymore, but it literally is the game changer. It's the
It
secret
is. No,
weapon.
no question about it. Um, and we don't talk about it. And
Yeah.
that's why it's gotten to this point. Um, and you said something several things very, very important. And it has it's two sides. We hear now that Black history, both modern and ancient history, is now being lobbied to be taken out of the school curriculum. Well, okay, but the fundamental responsibility to teach your children history, their history, and our history is around that kitchen table. I took it upon myself to teach my children their history and to help them understand how powerful and how important it was. That was a responsibility that Nora Jean and I took on for our children, just as I thought it was our responsibility to teach them about the proper management of accumulated wealth, right? And how you get wealth. That's our responsibility. If the system wants to do that, that's wonderful. That's icing on the cake. It ain't the damn cake. Because you brought them into this world. You are the cake. It is our responsibility to get their heads right. That's A. B, the most respected and the most powerful and the oldest institution in our culture is the Black church. There's 75,000 of them right here in America. They have ministries for everything you could possibly name. Why not have a couples ministry where couples talk about the challenges of continuing or to be couples and what kind of mindset and psychological or therapeutic help they can get to mitigate coming apart as a couple? And why not have marital ministries? And this is where married brothers and sisters come together with a qualified, let's call them, for lack of a better term, therapies. Doesn't have to be the pastor. There are a lot of us who are in social work and do therapy. So have a marital ministry. And this is where married couples come and talk. What is therapy? I mean, let's just think about it. Therapy is very simply having an open conversation with someone or someone's that you love and respect to get whatever poison is in there, whatever problems are in there, to bring them out, to look at all facets of those issues, and then to talk them through. That's really what therapy, you talk about it, get it out and talk about it. So we need therapy. We certainly around the institution of marriage. So where is the most trusted place in our culture? It is, in fact, the Black church. So those are two things that we can do. Um, the other thing we can do, and this is what Nora Jean and I had. Now, we were fortunate. My closest friend, Dr. Qua David Whitaker, was a family psychologist, right? He had a degree in law and a degree in psychology. He chose to practice family therapy, right? Not family law, but family therapy. And he was our family therapist. And he talked to my boys by themselves. He talked to Nora Jean and I, right,
Wait,
by
wait, wait, wait.
ourselves without the kids,
Dr.
right?
Fraser, hold on. I want to make sure everybody heard you. You said a therapist. You had a therapist.
That's right. That's right.
You had a therapist. I want to make sure people hear that. He had a
That's right.
therapist.
That's right. You call it a counsel if you want,
Right.
but it's therapy. It's
Right.
somebody you know, love, and respect and trust, and you can talk to them about the challenges that you are facing in the moment and get a third point of view and perspective on someone who's trained and understand how to mitigate and how to handle situations like that. So therapy is critically important. You cannot do this by yourself, and you will not get therapy from your mom or your dad because they're going to be biased on one side or another. You married to my son, or you married to my daughter. I mean, there probably is some small percentage of therapy that you can get, but it's you got to understand it's going to be biased. You need a neutral person who has no skin in the game. Right. So therapy, put that on your list of expenses, monthly expenses or quarterly expenses to get therapy, especially if in fact you are married, because you are not without problems. Usually when people ask me, Dr. Dr. Fraser, how long have you been married? Oh, I said, I've been married 31 wonderful years, 51 total.
Let me stop you here because I want to make sure, because I want to dig in right there. You got married in your 20s. I got married in my 20s. And I want to really help people understand this. When you say you're going to get married, I want you to listen to the words, to death do us part. So if all goes well, you could literally, I tease my wife and I tell people this, at 27 years of marriage, we're not even at the halfway point.
That's right.
And people overlook that. Like usually 20 years, you're retiring, you're going off, you spend 20 years somewhere. At 20 years in a marriage, I tell people it takes about 20 years just to regulate the marriage, for you to
That's
roll over and say, I guess we're gonna do this for real, right? So
right.
help us out because in the marriage, you have two people that are changing constantly.
That's right.
And so literally you 51 years, your wife is not the same person
That's right.
that you met 51 years ago. And so many people struggle with this, the evolution. We don't all grow at the same time. We all don't mature at the same time. Our body starts to change, our drives start to change. You bring in kids, you bring in grandkids. And so your word you said about these obstacles and challenges. So for you and your wife, in those changes, you're building a business as an entrepreneur. I don't know why anybody would want to do that to a marriage, right? To become an entrepreneur, you really want to test your marriage, become an entrepreneur, right?
That's right.
Um,
That's exactly right.
and so what are some of the things that as you guys have changed over the years, what were some of those things that you dug into and you said therapy, but what were some other things that you did to see your wife in a place of value, to understand her changes in life? What were some of the things that you did as a man? I know the people that are listening to us, the men that are listening to us, we need to
That's
have
an
conversation.
it's an incredible point and a great question. I knew, don't ask me how I knew. Maybe I read it somewhere many, many, many years ago that there's about a 20% chance of your marriage working. As you know, divorce is now the rate of divorce in our culture is now higher than the rate of marriage, right? And there's a 20% chance of it working. So here's what it looks like. You start here. Nora Jean and I started in our 20s. And or we believed at that time that we were equally yoked. Now, let me unpack equally yoked because a lot of people don't really understand what that means. What does equally yoked means? My strengths covers your weaknesses, and your strengths covers my weaknesses, right? And we're clear about that. So we start here, equally yoked. The first of two things can happen. You grow in one direction, she grows in another direction. That's the first of two things. The next two things, you outgrow her or she outgrows you. So now that's Four things that could happen. Or the fifth thing that can happen, this is the tough thing, is that you can grow together like a twisted ficus tree. Right? Have you ever seen a twisted ficus tree? The vines are right, and this is what makes it so stable. Now, that's difficult. People ask me, Dr. Fraser, what's the key to staying married for 51 years? And I said, well, it's a one-word answer: amnesia. Amnesia. Why? Because in 51 years, Dr. Fraser is going to do some dumb stuff. I'm human. I ain't perfect. And so is Nora Jean. Now, by the way, when we do our dumb stuff, we discuss it because we have a high emotional intelligence. We're not yelling at each other. We discuss it in moderate tones. We unpack it. We reach middle ground or resolution. Then we bless it and release it, never to bring it up again, unless that dumb shit was done again. Right? That's the key. But you have to have two people who are emotionally balanced. This is why understanding EQ, which is the two-letter word for emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. And that as you get older and wiser, you will find out that your EQ will be far more important than your IQ. Right? Now, you could be smart as hell, but if you have the personality of a box of rocks and you don't want to listen to people or try to understand and evolve, right? Ain't nothing gonna happen for you. And the same thing in a marriage. If you blowing up about everything that could go wrong, and there are many things that can go wrong, right? It's not going to last long. So you have to have uh, a mindset where you are as good a listener as you are a talker, probably a better listener, right? Because really listening, especially if there's a conversation between a black male and black female, because we look at things differently, right? Men are logical and succinct. Women typically are more emotional with lots of words. So you, right? And you learn that as you grow older and wiser. And so a lot of it is, in a sense, if you're listening to your wife, it's restating what you thought you heard and not interrupting while she's operating out of feelings. Right? Black men don't operate out of feelings. We are very pragmatic, very lineal, right? Very straightforward. We have far less words, right, than our women. That's not a bad thing. That's just the difference between men and women. Just no woman is exempt and no man is exempt. That's just the nature of us. So once you understand our nature, then you adjust your interaction, right, to meld those two things, which is the bond. And that takes patience and time, because you're exactly right. We are constantly changing. No question. Thank you, Jesus. I mean, thank you, Jesus. I'm not the same George Fraser today at 80 that I was at 28.
My goodness, Doc, I could talk to you all day long, and this is definitely a subject that we need to keep pouring into. I can't wait for your book to come out. As we get ready to land the plane, one other subject I want to talk about, because you've built one, as I said earlier, one of the most amazing conferences on the planet. Literally, as I said earlier, Forbes named it one of the top 5 business conferences to must attend conferences. And as you get older and as you see what you have built, one of the things I really appreciate about you as I've come to some of the later conferences is that you've done a great job in succession planning. And I want you to talk a little bit about that, why it was so important for you to develop leaders inside the organization and for you to pass that baton.
Yeah. Thank you, Will. One of the big issues we have as a culture of people is that we do not prepare younger generations to succeed, to take over the work that you spent your life invested in, right? I've spent 40 plus years working on and developing Fraser Net, the Power Networking Conference, Will's Wealth Building, Wynn's Wealth Building Centers and curriculum, et cetera. You can go on and on and on, right? So why would I invest my entire working life in building something and then when I die, it dies? Right. And this is so common. I mean, the category of, and I don't know if you know this, the category of businesses in our culture with the greatest record of succession planning is what? Funeral homes. And that's it. Where's Ebony Magazine? Uh, I mean, John H. Johnson. I mean, my God, we had it on our coffee table.
Yeah,
Black Enterprise Magazine, Earl Graves, we grew up together in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, New York, although he was 10 years ahead of me, did it right. He was a very good friend of mine, and I wanted to model the behavior of an Earl Graves. Succession planning. Essence Magazine, right? It went through several sales and one to a big white company, and now a black company has it, right? So there are some models, funeral homes, and some of our big businesses, but a few. It is just a waste of time, talent, and treasure, and intellectual capital and human capital to die, and your business dies. So you have to bring people along. And we see this in a lot of our organizations too, not just our businesses. The leader of that organization stays too long. We've corrected that in the presidency of the United States. You can only have 2 terms.
right.
All right. So it's critically important that we have, first of all, it has to be a mindset. Yes, I'm going to spend my life building this, and then I'm going to build someone alongside of me to take this who are, they're at least a generation or two younger than me, and then they're going to take it to the next level. Leave them the resources, leave them the infrastructure, leave them the database, right? To do that. That's the proper way to build a community, to build a culture, right? And so it's a mindset, though. We have to be taught this, or we have to be intellectually curious enough that it piques your interest, and it piqued my interest because I interviewed, or I had John H. Johnson at one of our events, certainly Earl Graves, and certainly Susan Taylor from Essence Magazine, and I wanted to model that. Right. I admired that. So pick someone that you admire who is an OG, or approaching OG-ness with a viable idea, or viable business, and watch what they do and how they do it, and then plan for that. Uh, because the books that you've written, your podcast, the way that you comport yourself, the intellectual rigor that you bring to everything that you do, there is someone young that can truly benefit from that. But you have to set the table, and you're setting the table for them. Right now, there's some individual stuff, but that's a whole thing, another thing. Yeah.
Well, win to win, family. You see why I had to have the amazing, phenomenal Dr. George Fraser. Just a wealth of information and insight. And once again, Doc, so glad that you were able to be on here. As we get ready to land the plane, let everybody know how they can stay connected with you, how they can get
Yeah.
connected to the Power Networking Conference and everything that you're doing.
Uh, yes. You want to stay connected with me? As I like to say, if you want to meet important people, you have to be where important people are. That's where Doc will be. Okay, at the Power Networking Conference. And there'll be 1,500 people at the Power Networking Conference. It'll be in the new Black Mecca of America, Atlanta. All right, Atlanta, November the 5th through the 11th. You want to connect with me? You want to meet important people? Be where important people are because they ain't coming to you. You have to go to them, then find a way to add value and to serve them, right? So, what I'd like to do is to make a special offer to anyone smart enough to be watching this podcast. So, we're going to call it the Dr. Will Moreland offer. And the offer is good for 24 hours after you view this podcast. To get a registration as an adult to come to our conference we sell out every year is $1,500. 1,500 bucks to be around the best and brightest subject matter experts that look like you on the planet. It's $1,500 for an adult. We encourage at our conference every year to bring a young person with you. A young person. Our young people ought to be sitting at the feet of masters. I can't even imagine where I would be if I had a power networking conference to go to when I was 28 years old or 21 years old. Right. So this is available to you. So a student registration is $800. So a student registration and an adult registration, you put them together, that's $2,300. I'm going to reduce that to $499.
Whoa.
$499. Was that about a 70%, 75% discount? Now, you cannot go to our website, our power networking experience.com, and get that. There's an offer on the website, but it ain't this offer. Okay. You It's very simple. You have to email me. You have to email me at gfraser@frasernet.com. That's gfraser@frasernet, one word.com. In the subject line, put I'm in. DOC, Doc. I know it's from Dr. Will. I'm in. Just put that in the subject line. Then in the body of the email, just simply put your full name and your cell number. Your full name and your cell number, and I will personally call you, and we will handle our business over the phone. That alone is worth the price of the call.
Ladies and gentlemen, listen, all of this information is going to be on this page, his email, his website, and everything that he just said about the conference. You want to ensure that you are part. It's not even a conference. I call it an experience. Literally, you walk through the halls and there is literally no telling who you will run into. I have met there some of the most prestigious business people in the world. I've met billionaires at this conference. I have created lasting relationships from this conference. You want to make sure that you are in attendance. It's in Atlanta in November. You do not want to miss it. Win to win, family. Listen, I tell you all the time, I'm only going to bring you the best of the best. But one of the things that I love about our podcast, if you see them on this podcast, that means they're the real deal. They've been vetted. They're the real deal. You don't have to worry about this is the real deal. You're looking at someone who's been in this game for 40 plus years and does it right. And so once again, all the information will be in the description. So once again, Doc, thank you so much. Will to Win, family. Thank you. Always tuning in. Remember to subscribe, hit the notification, all that jazzy stuff that keeps you connected for when we drop a brand new interview. This is the heat that we are bringing. So you don't never want to miss an episode. All right, guys, I'll see you next time. Be blessed.